Welcome to the first episode of the Nesting Eagles podcast. We're coordinators for the Bald Eagle Nest Watch and citizen scientists. I am Drew. I'm here with my co-host Beth. How's
Hi.
it going there in Wisconsin?
Cold.
Yeah,
Very, very cold.
yeah. As you'll get to know us, I'm now in Washington. Beth is still in Wisconsin, and just wanted to talk a little bit, dive into it, and talk a little bit about our backgrounds. I'll go first. I've been doing this for about 15 years. My family's tended to move around a little bit. So we started out, kind of caught the eagle bug in Colorado, volunteering for a group that's they've done they've watched nests for since like the late 1980s. So they've seen kind of the down years and then just the emergence of the population and everything. So that was really exciting to do that for about 5 years. After that, we moved to the Albany, New York area where I was looking for something similar and really couldn't find anything. So I said, you know what? Let me reach out to the local Audubons and see if they want to set up a program. So I set up my first bald eagle nest watch there in the Albany, New York area. If you've ever been to that area, it's great eagle area because the Hudsons and the Mohawk are both in that area, and it's really good fishing for the eagles. So there's a fair amount of eagles in that area. After that, we moved again a couple of years later to Wisconsin, and when we did that, I reached out to the Southern Wisconsin Bird Alliance, formerly the Madison Audubon, about setting up a group. And they agreed. We partnered with the DNR, and we're now going into our 8th season coming up here in February. So that's really exciting. It's the group has grown enormously. It's started out pretty with about I think it was like 40 people that first year. We're up to over 400. I haven't heard the latest count, but it's could be over 500 by now. So it's really exciting. Through the years, I think a couple years in, Beth, it was we met and tell everybody about a little bit about your background. It's kind of a funny story of how you got into eagle watching and
Yep.
doing all this fun stuff out in the cold right now
Yeah.
in Wisconsin. So.
So yeah, my husband and I read a newspaper article that said that there were bald eagles in every county of Wisconsin except for Walworth, I believe it was Kenosha, and then Milwaukee County. And I was like, what? Why? Why wouldn't there be bald eagles in Walworth? And I just took it as a personal offense that there was no bald eagle in Walworth County. So my husband and I just said, well, you want to get in the car? And we did. We took a drive and we found an eagle nest. Unfortunately, it was in Racine County, but it was right on the border of Walworth. Um, and then that prompted me to get in touch with the our rep at the DNR in Wisconsin DNR. And then one day she asked me if I'd ever heard of the Bald Eagle Nest Watch program, and I had not. And she asked that me and our the 6 friends that we were all starting to watch nests in Walworth County together, that we take a class with Drew and Brenna. And so we did, and then they were all electronic in their submissions to the DNR, whereas I was typing everything out for everything we saw. And so I thought, oh, this is easy to just join them. And so we did. And so we found many eagle nests in Walworth County. So it was not deplete of nests. And now every county in Wisconsin has a bald eagle nest. So that's great. We have bald eagles in some very urban areas. So
And that was very exciting. And you were part of that. Milwaukee County was probably the most exciting one, and you were part of that. And that, that was an exciting time, for the program and for you. I mean, that's unbelievable to have it. I think a couple people had done articles and done some research, and what were they talking? Maybe 125 plus years since there's been a nest in Milwaukee that was
yeah,
successful. Yeah.
the suspicion is it's been over 200 years
Wow.
because Milwaukee, in order for it to have been built, you need wood, and in order to heat it and in order to cook food, you needed wood. And so the forests were depleted. So if you don't have habitat, you can't have bald eagles because they need old growth, very tall trees. And they were depleted. Trees were pretty well depleted for counties, around. So I think I forget the exact number of years, but it was somewhere around 120 or 130. And at that time, the nearest nest was in Jefferson County, which does not even border Milwaukee County. So
Yeah.
bald eagles were quite a distance away.
Yeah, so it's a great process and really exciting. And we have grown loops and brown at the Bald Eagle Nest Watch. We're now, I think last count, I think we have a majority of the counties. We have some presence in it, so it's really exciting and great work. We partnered with the DNR to really be there, boots on the ground. They have unfortunately stopped flying over the nest, which they did when the population was smaller and they had to monitor it. But we're in a lot of cases we're the main data collectors or watchers of a lot of nests in the state, which is really exciting. It's been a lot of fun. I think what we'll jump into, Beth, and jump in if you have any comments is, what are the Eagles doing now? I mean, you had told me that you had actually went out a little bit this morning.
Yeah.
What are the Eagles up to in your area, in that area in southeastern Wisconsin?
-3 degrees did not bother them with a -12 wind chill this morning. So there were at least a dozen roosted along the Geneva Lake. I think we've counted over 20 at a time. So what's happening right now is eagles are getting pushed south due to the freezing of the lakes and rivers and whatnot. So we still have an open portion of the lake. So they were fishing, they were chasing each other. The weather certainly doesn't seem to have affected them too much, but it is really unbelievable to see because I mean, just a couple years ago, there was supposedly no nest in Walworth County. I mean, what was it? It'd be 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, and I've never seen more than a family of eagles, at the lake. So to see 20 plus eagles, it's like, wow, we
Yeah,
came a
that's
long way in a short distance. Even though these are transients coming in, but it's still so cool to see.
Yeah, so just a little bit of background. This time of year, what the Eagles are doing is a lot of them, they come down from they'll come down from Canada and northern Wisconsin, and they're just looking for areas where they can feed because most of northern Wisconsin is you know it's under some ice, so there's not a lot of food for them up there, so they're migrating down as far as they can on major rivers like the Wisconsin River and trying to find lakes like Geneva Lake where there are open waters, dams, that kind of thing. So they're looking and they'll congregate together, and that's what they have to do to find food and to make it through the winter. As far as the nesting pairs, we have a lot of nesting pairs in Wisconsin that they'll hang out. I think most of yours, Beth, you can find most of the year at
Yeah.
your nest. Yeah.
They don't
Um,
leave the area generally. They stick.
yeah.
They
So
might
that
go away for 2 weeks and return.
Yeah, so there a fair amount that do that I've seen as well is they'll hang out by their nesting territory pretty much, maybe 11 months of the year, maybe all 12, and they're getting ready. They're starting to do pair bonding. Eagles are really known for their legendary helicopter flights. Unfortunately, I've never caught it. I don't think you have either, Beth. Have you, the locking of the
Not
talons?
the real thing. No, I've caught subadults doing it, in play, but never the real McCoy.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll get lucky at some point. I've heard it's amazing process. I've seen many videos of it. So basically what they do is they lock talons and they kind of tumble. to the ground and then released before. It's basically depending on the pair. If they are a brand new pair, they're just establishing their pair bonds. If they're established pair, they're just kind of checking each other's fitness. Is really what it is all about. Is you know, because they want to go into the season with their mates that's in good health and can do all the tasks that's needed. Nesting eagles, it's about a 5 month process from start to finish. So they're kind of starting that process right now. Most of the ones in the northern area that we are get started about February 1st. So they'll be getting together and starting to lay eggs and doing all that. So what are some of the behaviors you've seen so far, Beth, in this preseason breeding, I guess? What have you seen
Well, a
eagles
lot of
doing?
sticks going to nests. So several of our pairs are working on the construction of the nest, which, as you know, bonds them together, working on the house, which then they tend to argue about where to put the stick and they move it around about a dozen times. It seems like a stick is never brought into the nest and laid down and stays there. It's,
Yeah, it's funny. Like I've watched a number of nests in my 15 years doing that, and they all have very different personalities,
they do.
and they do different things. There's some of the more fun pairs is the ones that squabble a little bit, and kind of, that old married couple that you see kind of giving it back and forth. But it's funny to watch them, and they're hanging out together, kind of reestablishing those bonds, possibly doing the flights, and then um, tell the story about that one nest, the duck throwing thing. That's a real interesting one that you saw a few years ago.
Oh, the coot.
Yeah, the coot
Yeah.
that was being
Yeah.
used
So
as a pair bonding tool or toy or whatever
well,
you want to call it.
he was failing that test. So yeah, there is a pair that was relatively new. We knew they hadn't been together for longer than a year, probably 6 months, and he had brought her back to the territory, and it's a rather urban area, and he had a coot and he was flying back to the nest with it. He kept trying to go to the nest, and boy, she was on his heels, and she wanted that coot. And he would fly into the nest. She would fly in right after him. He would take off again with the coot. And at one point, they came down the alley, and I don't know who we were in the alley talking to, but the woman was walking her dog, and my husband just yelled out, "Hit the deck!" Because they just came soaring down the alley, like right at us, really low, and just yelling at each other the entire time. And you could tell the male was completely exhausted. And eventually, like the third or the fourth time hitting the nest, he just stopped flying. And she came into the nest and just sort of hip checked him
Yeah,
right out of it and took the coot. And we were standing there, and I had you on speakerphone at the time, and
yeah,
I remember you going, "I can't believe what you're seeing." And it was like, I can't believe what I'm seeing. And they were so close. I had a long lens to be looking at the nest, and so I didn't catch a lot of it because they were just,
yeah, so
you know,
close. Yeah.
coming right up to us. But I did think he didn't really learn that if he was looking to enter into the mating season, he should have given her the coop.
Yeah, that's something I think he's learned. It looks like fingers crossed. What is this, like his
It's his
fourth
fourth
attempt
female. Yeah.
so it's not always love at first sight, I guess, for Eagles others. So they're doing that. They're looking to pair up and looking for territories, and you might see some squabbling too if it happens here and there where another adult comes in and the one of the adults get pushed out. It's kind of the nature of the beast, I guess, of eagles. And let's see
There's
what else.
definitely a lot of eagles sitting side by side too,
Yeah,
which is atypical. They tend to not they're sort of individuals, they don't need to be physically, close to one another, but when they're out sitting on the lakefront and whatnot, they've been sitting side by side, which is another form of courtship, if it's a bonded pair together. But it's different than a communal roost.
Yeah, and they'll be doing the D2. We do see some
Yeah.
copulation at this time. It's probably not it's not going to be producing eggs yet, but they do that as well, and starting to bond up and get that going. So during the pod, we're going to kind of periodically, hopefully weekly, maybe every other week, and we'll kind of go through what's going on during the season. This is going to be through the Northern Eagles. I know there are nest cams down in Florida and there, and those guys are off and running. I think they start in early
Oh
November, I
yeah.
believe. So but we'll talk about those too if people are interested and have questions for us. You can actually reach us at what is it, Nesting Eagles podcast at gmail.com. So if you have any questions you want us to answer and partake in on the pod, let us know, send those along, and we'll try to answer them. I know you had one, Beth, from I think one of your coworkers at one of your other volunteers efforts that you do, and about is this ice with this cold stretch, is this going to affect nesting and the timing? And just to answer that one, I think it does. Actually, one of the nests that one of my longtime nests in Wisconsin, I'm actually missing it now. I wish it was out there, but they they are on a lake that is pretty much, from what I've seen, is pretty much solid. It's probably rock solid right now. There's no open water. It's a smaller lake, so it doesn't have any of those. And eagle nests like that's on those smaller lakes. They tend to go. Their timing is a little bit later, so they're on the tail end of the season. So that ice will definitely affects the timing because those nesting pairs need open water or some food source. They can go into mammals or other food sources, but they need some sort of source of food that they have while they start in the nesting season because it's a long process, takes a lot of energy, and once they have eaglets, they need a steady supply of prey items to feed those growing chicks. So I think the ice will affect it. We'll see. I mean, there's always usually some sort of break. Once we get into February, typically in Wisconsin. So once that ice starts to recede and it gets a little bit warmer and it's showing signs of spring, then they'll perk up. And so I think it will definitely affect some of the timing. So we might, if it does stay unseasonably cold, there's a chance that they will start a little bit later than they do typically. So
And I think that affected us last year
yeah.
because we had some wild swings with temperatures. And that's one of the things, though, that we do in our citizen science project is we take count of what the temperature is when we visit the nests and what the winds are. And so when you compile that data, you can see that, okay, when we hit a real low, when there's a dramatic drop in temperatures, it does affect, I think, egg production is what we see because, they have to incubate. They can't be off the nest very long. Last year, I thought it was interesting that we didn't have many 3 eaglet nests, which typically we have a pretty good number.
Yeah, and that's a lot of the larger clutch sizes, I guess, and more hatching is usually linked to prey, how much prey they have. So if they do have, if there's good eats and good prey items and good fishing around the nest, there's a good chance that they'll raise multiple twos and threes in their nest to fledge, if there's good enough food around the area for and then they get quite busy, especially when you have three. You've seen it, Beth. When they have three, it's a party in the nest and it gets pretty rowdy. They're, typical once they get older too, and they're bigger and almost 8 weeks and beyond, where they're getting ready to fledge. It gets pretty wild in there, and it's
Yeah.
a it's a lot of work for the adults to keep bringing that food, fish or whatever it is, to the nest to keep
And
those
that third
basically
one
teenagers.
never wants to leave.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
joke that they're Velcroed in the nest, but that's another podcast.
Yeah, yeah. We'll do that a little bit later in the season. And then I think our third thing that we just wanted to get in and start the process is avian flu. You've probably heard of it. It's wreaked havoc on our egg prices and domestic birds like ducks and chickens. And also it plays a big role in eagles, especially with like apex predators, like um, the bald eagle, that are also fish eagles. So they're eating a lot of water birds, and ducks and coots and gulls and that kind of stuff, and a lot of types of birds that do um, unfortunately carry bird flu and can cause some havoc. So, Beth, talk a little bit about what we're seeing so far. I know we had a really devastating year in 22. What are you
Yeah.
seeing in 24, as far as what's going on this
It
year?
looks like we're gearing up again for a bad year, but it just depends on how migration goes and um how far south the eagles are pushed out of Wisconsin, because Illinois is having quite a hard time, and a lot of rehab centers in Illinois are not accepting any birds due to the spread. So they have had mass die-offs of geese and other water birds. So what happens is you have a mass die-off of geese, and then the bald eagles, they are scavengers as well as fishers and mammal eaters. They will also scavenge. So they go down and they eat the carcass, and uh, avian flu is passed via fluids. So it's nose secretions, uh, poop, for lack of a better word. So if you're consuming that bird, you're getting fluids, obviously. So you are transferring the flu then to the raptor that eats it, and then I think it kind of depends on the bird as to whether or not it's been exposed to any avian flu in the past, because um, we know from citizen science, and these are some of the things that we learn because we're eyes on nests, dedicated week to week. That if you're feeding chicks in a nest, a duck, and it's carrying the pathogen, and the adults are fine, but the chicks die, there's a reason why those adults are surviving, which is likely that they've had it before, or maybe the viral load wasn't as great for them. But not being a biologist, and that not being my job, I don't really know why, but I do know that they can resist it. But it's a death sentence to the eaglets. And then what we have had happening along sort of between Walworth County and Rock County is we have had a couple of bald eagles and a couple of red-tailed hawks that have needed to be euthanized, because um, once their issues become neurological, where they can no longer really control their head movement, or they can't fly any longer, which mimics to some degree lead poisoning and rodenticides. Also, oh, I can't think of the name of it, where you get the spores from the degrading leaves, and
Yeah,
that can have similar side effects. So Illinois isn't accepting, I guess, any ill birds. Wisconsin is. There has been a body taken for testing, but it takes a long time to get the testing back. But if it's testing negative for rodenticide and for lead poisoning, and the fungal thing, then it is the next suspect is avian flu. Um, the CDC says there's very little chance of human transfer from wild birds, but our thing to you, whoever is watching this,
Yeah.
is that if you see a group of birds, waterfowl dead, please call it into the DNR and call it into your local wildlife rehab, whatever is closest to you, so that they're aware of it. And then hopefully someone will um, clean that up so that raptors don't continue to die from it. But also, if you see a downed raptor, you should call your local wildlife rehab and let them know about it, and then follow their instructions on what, if anything, they want you to do about it. But um, the I volunteer as a raptor handler as well, and one of our big mantras is please don't use lead. And, don't use lead shot when you're hunting. Don't use lead lures, because it is just devastating. It's a painful death for
Yeah.
raptors and waterfowl that consume it. So the one interesting thing that I find, and this is again, I'm not a biologist, but it's very interesting to me that um, dabbling ducks in particular seem to carry this in their digestive tract. They always have this pathogen. It changes, but and it doesn't affect them. Um, but if you catch a dabbling duck for dinner and you're a bald eagle, then again, you brought it to the nest and you're feeding it to the young. But it does affect birds like geese.
Yeah.
So it's it's curious how this it moves through the waterfowl. um but best thing to do is call wildlife rehab, and just if you see mass die off, you report it as quickly as you can.
Yeah, let your state agency, I know across the country, they call it different things. DNR or Fish and Wildlife or whatever it's called. Yeah, alert them to that because it is concerning. It also can get into, some domestic situations as well. So, we don't want this to spread in the wild or into domestic birds as well, because it's devastating for both. And, nobody likes paying what is it, like $6 a dozen eggs or whatever at the
Oh yeah.
supermarket. So that affects the prices as well. So yeah, it's we don't recommend you touch them either. It's just there's been a few cases of humans contracting it. It's a low risk, but it's
That's
still there is a risk.
domesticated,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
catching it from the wild, I don't think has happened yet.
yeah.
I wouldn't do it. And if I'll cross that bridge when I get to it,
Yeah,
but rubber gloves, face mask, face shield, and if you don't have PPE, then you want to walk in the door of your home and put all your clothing into the washing machine
yeah.
and get in the shower. And -3 is not the day to do that.
Yeah, yeah. So that's one of the concerns we're looking at. Hopefully it's not, because, we had probably one of the better data sets of bird flu back in 22 and how it's affecting the eagles and an apex predator. We had over 50% fail rates that year, which was devastating. It was really tough. It was a tough year. Beth, we were talking pretty much daily, and it was
Yeah.
rough. We wanted to do the task of kind of being a scientist and being a citizen scientist and collecting the data, but it was rough being a coordinator and basically getting emails, texts, and calls virtually every day saying, "Hey, there's nothing
Something
at my
went
nest."
really
No,
wrong. Yeah.
yeah. And so it was a little rough. So hopefully we don't get that again. Fingers crossed, but it's something that we have to keep an eye on and get the word out that it's not just domestic, it is the wild birds, especially as the waterfall are um migrating. You see these large groupings of all kinds of birds mostly on water and open water. So it's easy for it to be exchanged between these types. And then, the predators come in, like eagles, and the sick ones are the easy pickings, or if they are dead, it's easy pickings for them as well. So, and then they contract it to themselves or their offspring and their nestlings. So it's devastating, and something we'll keep an eye on, and we'll update as we go along in the pod about what's going on. Yeah, let's end on something a little more positive. I'm trying to think. I'll tell a funny story about a nest, and I'll hand it off to you to close out. I'm a dad of three kids, so I could really relate to this. This is one of my nests in New York, and it's I'd say the eaglets were probably maybe 4 or 5 weeks old, and he had dad came in with some with a fish, I believe it was, and he was, you know, great dad, really helping out, and I could relate to that. And this nest had been successful for a number of years. They were a great pair. They were great at defending and everything, and so he was flew into the nest, dropped something off, and then he got when they're little, they have to take a poop off the side of the nest, and it's a little bit of a practice for him. So this one of his eaglets shot him right in the face
Oh no.
with poop. So it was just funny. I laughed about it. I can relate as a dad. I all kinds of bodily fluids. You name it, with three boys. So I just thought that was the funniest thing. I really related to that eagle because he kind of looked up, but he was, like, oh, no, that's what happens. So that was kind of one of my funny stories. Do you have one, Beth, that kind of pops out? That's a
Not
little
that
bit,
good. I
yeah,
I just am so proud of the eaglets when they finally stop pooping in the nest and they learn to go hang their
yeah, off the
tails over
side.
the edge of the nest. And it seems to be different by nest, that where the parents are like, okay, come on, stop this. Because they don't clean their nests. They don't
No,
remove
no.
debris. They just put another layer of grass over the top of it. So
Yeah, and I've talked to a couple of people that climb the nest to ban birds or whatever, and they said the smell is awful. So you got a lot of like rotting fish and other stuff, and it's not a pleasant smell up there. So
well, in these urban areas, I keep telling people, do you don't park your car there because
yeah,
it's like, well, it's not under the nest, and it's like it's within shooting distance,
yeah,
like shooting distance, and I'm like, poop, yeah, you're gonna
yeah. They can
claim
shoot it
Vermont,
quite a ways, so
yeah, it
it's
goes,
it's
yeah,
funny. So,
and
but
it can be as someone who has to periodically clean up after bald eagles at a raptor program,
yeah,
um,
you're used to
that's
it. Yeah,
That's not fun
yeah, yeah,
fun
sure.
to clean. It's required of us, but it is not a good time.
Yeah. All right, well, great. I think that we'll close there. We're gonna, keep this up, and hopefully you guys like it. If you do like it, please hit that like button on YouTube and subscribe so you get notices. We're also gonna do some other things. We're talking about it today, possibly doing some infield stuff. So showing you, getting some videos,
Video.
some smaller stuff there too, and then doing the pod periodically as well as the season goes along. So as I said, Nesting Eagles podcast at gmail.com. If you have any questions, we're going to be
You,
up
you know,
in.
if I can interject one thing before we
Sure.
go, I think you and I get a kick out of talking. We've only met in person twice, I
Yeah.
think. So our relationship formed over the phone
Yeah.
of just talking all things Eagle. And I think one of the things that makes this program that we do so unique is that we have eyes on nests and we watch from a healthy distance. We never want to spook the eagles or alter their behavior in any way because we're there. So we stay, the required distance away. Um, but through the program, we have seen a lot of anomalies that go against the grain of what has always been said the suspected behavior of a bald eagle is at a nest. And we're during the season we're going to be talking about those, and I just think that they're fascinating because unless you have a citizen science group like what Drew put together for Wisconsin here, we wouldn't know some of the really interesting things that we know about bald eagle behavior, or in on the adverse side, we wouldn't know how a virus affects a bald eagle nest. So it's really interesting. I think we have some good stuff coming up that
Yeah,
will.
yeah. Stay tuned. We'll definitely as we go along, we'll hit as many topics as we possibly can. It is interesting. You know, I've been doing this a while, and I'm still learning. There's stuff that
Yeah,
pops up. You know, a volunteer will say, "Hey, I saw this." Like, I think a couple of years we actually witnessed in one nest one of the eaglets, a little bit the older one, because
they're a
they do
couple days
hatch at
apart.
different periods, so they're different sizes. The oldest one was actually feeding the younger one, which I thought it's crazy. Like, there's just little things like that that we come across that are not known. So that's always fun. I'm always learning, and hopefully enjoy the podcast, and hopefully you know, it's a fun process to learn a lot more about bald eagles and what's going on. And you know, we'll highlight some of the nest cams. We kind of do a little bit different thing than them. They're so close, and they have a very close
Yeah,
view, where we have more of a
broad.
overarching view of the territory, you know, viewing the nest from 500 feet or whatever safe distance we are. And you see that on nest cams, where you see the eagle react in the nest, and you're like, what's going on? Like, we see that before it comes. You see another intruding eagle, or something happening, or, you know, a great horned owl or whatever it is coming in. We see that beforehand, and you get a kind of a different view. The nest cams are great, and I think what we do is great as well. So you get kind of a great look at both ways that you can observe a nest. So hopefully you
And
like it.
surprisingly, we have learned a lot. We continue to learn, and we're surprised by the things that we see
Yeah.
and we know now from being, on the ground doing the observations.
Yeah, so we'll have a lot of fun stuff. And as I said, hit that like button and subscribe to us, and we'll see you in the future. Thank you.
Bye-bye.